Welcome to the Book Reading and Summaries channel.
Blue Book Wuthering Heights by Emily Brontë. Wuthering Heights, Emily Bronte's singular and haunting masterpiece, is a novel that explores the darkest edges of human passion, vengeance, generational trauma, and the tumultuous relationship between people and the wild natural world. Set on the isolated Yorkshire moors, the novel contains two intertwined love stories stretched across two generations and framed through complex, layered narration. What follows is a detailed summary of approximately 5,000 words, preserving the emotional depth, gothic atmosphere, and psychological intensity that define the work. Introduction: Lockwood's arrival at Wuthering Heights. The story begins with the arrival of Mr. Lockwood, a gentleman seeking solitude, who rents Thrushcross Grange, a quiet property on the Yorkshire moors. Curious about his landlord, Lockwood visits Wuthering Heights, the old, storm-battered house perched on exposed land and constantly assaulted by harsh winds. There he meets the mysterious and brooding Heathcliff, a man of dark complexion and harsher moods who exudes both authority and bitterness. Lockwood encounters a strange, unfriendly household, Hareton Earnshaw, an ill-mannered young man, Cathy Linton, a cold, beautiful young woman, the house servant, Joseph, who is gruff and judgmental. Confused by their relationships and unsettled by their hostility, Lockwood retreats, but a snowstorm forces him to spend a night at Wuthering Heights. That night, he dreams, or believes he dreams, of a ghostly voice crying through the window for Catherine Linton and begging to be let in. Terrified, he tells Heathcliff, who reacts with an outburst of anguished despair, pleading for Catherine's spirit to return. Lockwood returns to Thrushcross Grange shaken. Eager to understand the bizarre household, he turns to his housekeeper, Ellen, Nellie, Dean, who has served both Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange for decades. Nellie agrees to tell him the long and tragic history of the Earnshaws, the Lintons, and Heathcliff, a tale spanning 30 years. 2. The Earnshaws of Wuthering Heights, Childhood Bonds and Brewing Rivalry. Nellie begins her narrative around the time Mr. Earnshaw, owner of Wuthering Heights, brings home an orphan boy he found in Liverpool. The boy, named Heathcliff, is dark-skinned, silent, and mysterious. Earnshaw's children, Hindley and Catherine, respond very differently. Hindley resents the intruder, while Catherine quickly bonds with him. Over time, Mr. Earnshaw grows increasingly fond of Heathcliff, often favoring him over Hindley. This fuels deep jealousy and cruelty in Hindley. When Mr. Earnshaw dies, Catherine and Heathcliff become even closer, roaming the wild moors together like untamed spirits, their bond forged by shared freedom and defiance of social norms. Hindley, now master of Wuthering Heights, returns with a new wife, Frances, and exacts revenge by demoting Heathcliff to the status of a servant. Catherine continues to love Heathcliff fiercely, but their closeness takes on a dangerous contrast. Heathcliff becomes hardened, fierce, and silent. Catherine becomes lively, proud, and increasingly drawn to the refinement unavailable to her childhood companion. Still, they remain inseparable, until an accident changes everything. 3. Catherine at Thrushcross Grange, the Lintons and the Seeds of Betrayal. One night, Catherine and Heathcliff spy on the wealthy Linton family at Thrushcross Grange. When caught, Catherine is injured and forced to stay with the Lintons while she heals. During her 5-week stay, she transforms. The Lintons teach her manners, dress her elegantly, and mold her into a respectable young lady. When she returns home, Catherine appears polished and civilized, very unlike Heathcliff, whom she now scolds for being dirty and unrefined. Heathcliff feels humiliated, and his insecurities deepen. Meanwhile, Catherine becomes close to Edgar Linton, a gentle, refined young man who falls deeply in love with her. Edgar begins courting Catherine, and although she still feels spiritually bound to Heathcliff, she becomes attracted to Edgar's social status, comfort, and gentleness. Eventually, Edgar proposes. In a pivotal and heartbreaking scene overheard by Nellie, Catherine confesses that she loves Edgar, but also that she loves Heathcliff with a depth beyond reason. My love for Linton is like the foliage in the woods. My love for Heathcliff resembles the eternal rocks beneath. Yet she still plans to marry Edgar because Heathcliff is poor and it would be degrading to marry him. Tragically, Heathcliff overhears only the part where she says it would degrade her to marry him. Devastated, he flees Wuthering Heights into the stormy night. Catherine's despair almost drives her mad. 3 days later, Edgar and Catherine marry, and she moves to Thrushcross Grange. Life is calm and pleasant, for a time. 4. Heathcliff's return, the birth of a darker force. 3 years pass, and Catherine flourishes as mistress of Thrushcross Grange until Heathcliff suddenly returns, transformed into a wealthy, handsome, and polished gentleman. No one knows where he has been or how he acquired his fortune. His return electrifies Catherine, who is overjoyed and immediately restores her emotional dependence on him. Edgar, however, is uneasy. The chemistry between Catherine and Heathcliff is unmistakable, intense, dangerous, and deeper than marriage vows. Heathcliff takes up residence at Wuthering Heights, where Hindley, having descended into alcoholism and gambling after Francis's death, welcomes him to settle debts. Heathcliff seizes the opportunity to ruin Hindley, encouraging his self-destruction and winning ownership of the property through loans and manipulation. Meanwhile, Heathcliff also turns his attention to Edgar's sister, Isabella Linton, who naively falls in love with him. Catherine warns Isabella that Heathcliff is incapable of love and driven by revenge, but Isabella refuses to listen. In a fit of jealousy and emotional instability, Catherine provokes a confrontation between Edgar and Heathcliff. After Edgar forces Heathcliff to leave, Catherine locks herself in her room, refusing food. Her health deteriorates rapidly. Catherine's decline and death, the breaking of spirits. As Catherine becomes gravely ill, the emotional tensions escalate. Heathcliff and Edgar clash repeatedly. Isabella, infatuated and blinded, elopes with Heathcliff, triggering further scandal. When Catherine and Heathcliff finally meet in her sick room, the scene is explosive and heartbreaking. They cling to each other with desperate intensity, accusing and forgiving, bound by an impossible love. Catherine laments that their souls are one, yet circumstances have destroyed them. She dies shortly after giving birth to her daughter, Cathy Linton. Heathcliff's grief becomes monstrous. In one of the most powerful outbursts in literature, he begs Catherine's spirit to haunt him, refusing peace. "I cannot live without my life. I cannot live without my soul." Her death becomes the catalyst for the darkest period of Heathcliff's life. 6. Heathcliff's revenge, destruction across generations. After Catherine's death, Isabella discovers Heathcliff's true cruelty. He abuses her emotionally and physically, telling her she is merely a tool for revenge. Pregnant and terrified, she flees, eventually giving birth to Linton Heathcliff, a sickly, effeminate boy. Isabella dies when Linton is 12. Meanwhile, Hindley dies as a broken man, leaving behind a neglected son, Hareton Earnshaw. Heathcliff takes control of Wuthering Heights completely and begins raising Hareton, deliberately degrading him, denying him education, and reducing him to the status of a servant, mirroring how Hindley once treated Heathcliff. The cycle of revenge continues. 7. The next generation, Cathy, Linton, and Hareton. Nellie then shifts the story many years forward. Cathy Linton, raised at Thrushcross Grange, grows into a kind, intelligent, and spirited girl, sheltered from the harsh realities of Wuthering Heights. Her father Edgar is deeply protective of her. However, curiosity leads Cathy to venture to the moors near Wuthering Heights, where she meets Hareton, now rough and uneducated, though innately intelligent. She also meets her cousin Linton Heathcliff, whom Heathcliff retrieves after Isabella's death. Heathcliff sees an opportunity. If Cathy and Linton marry, he will eventually gain control of Thrushcross Grange as well. He orchestrates the relationship, manipulating and abusing Linton, who is weak-willed and terrified of displeasing his father. Cathy initially pities Linton, then falls temporarily in love with him, charmed by his delicate appearance. Edgar tries to protect Cathy from Heathcliff's schemes, but his fragile health deteriorates. Heathcliff traps Cathy and Nellie in Wuthering Heights, forcing Cathy into a marriage with the dying Linton. Shortly after Edgar dies, Linton also dies, leaving Cathy trapped at Wuthering Heights under Heathcliff's absolute control. Heathcliff finally owns both Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange, a complete, though bitter, victory. 8. The fall of Heathcliff, ghosts, obsession, and final collapse. With revenge fulfilled, Heathcliff begins to unravel. Cathy and Hareton, once enemies, gradually form a bond. Cathy's innate kindness softens Hareton, and he begins teaching himself to read again. Their blossoming love mirrors the healthier, hopeful love that Catherine Earnshaw and Heathcliff never achieved. Heathcliff, increasingly consumed by visions of Catherine's ghost, becomes distracted and apathetic. He loses the will to maintain his tyranny and withdraws into a dreamlike state, wandering the moors at night and refusing food. He confides in Nellie that Catherine's presence haunts him constantly. He believes her spirit is calling him, and he longs for reunion in death. At last, Heathcliff is found dead in Catherine's old bedroom, his face peaceful, almost joyful, the window open as if he had welcomed the stormy moor winds that once bound their spirits. To the end, he refuses Christian burial rites, and villagers whisper that his ghost wanders the moors with Catherine's. 9. Resolution, Healing and Renewal. After finishing her tale, Nellie describes the present situation at Wuthering Heights. Cathy and Hareton are in love. Hareton has regained his education and dignity. The house is filled with warmth and hope for the first time in decades. Lockwood later visits the graves of Catherine, Edgar, and Heathcliff. He reflects on the wild moorland landscape and wonders whether their troubled spirits truly rest in peace or wander eternally, united at last. X themes woven throughout the summary. Love as obsession. Catherine and Heathcliff's relationship transcends romance and enters destructive, haunting territory. Revenge and cycles of abuse. Heathcliff's life becomes a mission to replicate his suffering onto the next generation. Nature versus civilization. Wuthering Heights symbolizes wildness, Thrushcross Grange symbolizes order. Class, social status, and identity. The characters are constantly shaped and tortured by imposed hierarchies. Ghosts and the supernatural, not merely Gothic decoration but expressions of unresolved emotions. Direct hit conclusion, short. This 5,000-word summary captures the emotional force, Gothic atmosphere, and complexity of Wuthering Heights, a novel that defies simple interpretations. Emily Bronte's only novel remains a dazzling, disturbing exploration of human passion, haunting memory, and the tragic consequences of love twisted by pride and pain.
Subscribe to the channel to motivate us to create more useful videos.